miss that. Perfect. Okay, we are recording. So I want to just do a quick introduction for you guys. If you don't already know me, my name is Sammy, and I am the owner of Find Food Freedom, which you see on social media. I'm sure a lot of people come onto these trainings from our social media. So I just want to give a little bit of background. I am a registered dietitian. I am a certified intuitive eating counselor, which is through Evelyn Tribole and Elise Resch, the authors of Intuitive Eating, who wrote the book back in 1995. So intuitive eating has been out for a very, very, very long time. But it's awesome that now it's becoming, I want to say, a big deal on social media. And people are starting to wonder, like, what is this? This sounds really great. I am a certified personal trainer, although I don't really talk about it much, but I love movement and how it can make our body feel. And then, like I said, I'm the owner of Find Food Freedom. We do everything from one-on-one coaching, we do group coaching, we have a new mastermind that we're launching, and then I'm also the co-host of the Drunk Dietitians podcast. I do want to also note we have a team of virtual dietitians that work at Find Food Freedom, and every single one of our dietitians is also a certified intuitive eating counselor. We are huge, 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 huge on being credentialed in our field and making sure that if we are providing care to clients, that they're getting the best possible care and have the best resources. So that's really important. So if you've ever met with a dietitian or just with a health coach or anyone honestly that considers themselves in the wellness space, you have the right, and if anything, I definitely want to encourage you, anytime you're working with a medical professional, ask them about their background, ask them about their credentials, ask them about their continuing education. I think it's important to be an advocate of your own health, and I think this is really important in 2020 to be an advocate of your health. So I'm going to head on over to the next slide because I want you to know that even as much as I am a dietitian, as I said, I'm also a normal human being, and I've been in diet culture for a lot of my life. Spent about 8 years in diet culture being a chronic yo-yo dieter, where I almost like to use past tense because it feels like it's like not even a part of like a me that I remember, but I hated my body. I had trouble sleeping. I had anxiety. I would work out only to burn calories in attempts to lose weight. I would eat less during the week, especially certain types of food to air quotes be good. Um, I would do binge on any type of food and break down and then eat even more of that food because I had broke my food rules. I thought that drinking alcohol in excess was going to help me de-stress or numb my emotions. Constantly yo-yo dieting. I thought my body was the problem. I thought it was working against me. And I truly weighed myself every single day thinking that if I did that, that would help control, air quotes, my health. And I say this, and I think it's important to take note of this kind of stuff because I've lived this life, and I know that this is no longer for me. Now that I truly live in this life of food freedom, and this is the Sammy now, right? I am an intuitive eater, and I will never go back to chronic dieting again. Respecting my body, honoring sleep. I still struggle with anxiety, but I now have coping mechanisms to help me with that. I enjoy movement now. I used to think of it as a punishment, but now it's something I actually do look forward to and know that my body loves. Um, I rest for days or weeks at a time if needed. I make sure there's a carbohydrate at every single meal and snack. I do not restrict food. I love nutrient dense foods because they make me feel good, not because I, air quotes, have to eat them. I honor my body. I trust my body. And I cannot tell you the last time I weighed myself, and I do not own a scale. And so I like to share this just because this has been my personal story. Now, again, this is just from my perspective. I know that every single person on this call today has a different past, a different experience with dieting. And so this is not saying that this is going to be your lived experience by any way, shape, or form. But I just want you to know that I've been in diet culture. I haven't always been an intuitive eater. I haven't always been someone with food freedom. And I think that's important to take note of because there are people that are fortunate enough to grow up as an intuitive eater, have parents that support that, and never question themselves and have peace with food their whole life. And that's our goal here, is to really create that environment. So, what I want from you guys right now, that if you're like, okay, I'm here, I'm hearing you, awesome, like, let's do this. I want to learn more about how to make peace with food, which is why we're here for day one. I want everyone with me to take a deep breath. So, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Okay. And I want, if you are saying, yes, I will do this, I want you to write, I will in the chat. I will leave the guilt and shame at the door today. I'm going to give myself grace and I'm going to stay curious during this presentation. So if you're saying, yes, I will do that, I'm going to do the best of my ability to remove the guilt and shame, to have grace with myself, to stay curious. Love it. I see so many I wills coming through. And I think that's so important that when we're learning about intuitive eating and food freedom, that we're truly giving ourselves grace through this process, is we've all been taught in diet culture. We've all been engulfed in the $72 billion diet industry for so long that it's easy to have shame and guilt tied to that. We're going to leave that at the door. And so now, for the moment we're waiting for, right? What we're actually getting into today is how to make peace with food and enjoy life again. So you do not have to do this. This is not required whatsoever. But if you're pumped about this, and some of you have already been tagging us in social media, which we love to interact with each and every single one of you, feel free to take a picture of this slide, take a picture of our Zoom call, post it on your Instagram story. If that's something you like to do, is engage, on your story, tag us. We will absolutely put you back in our stories and re-tag you and let you know that we were with you today. So feel free, take a picture, tag us. We're so excited you're here, and we're so excited to get into this. So I think before we even talk about food freedom, and what it means to make peace with food, I think it's really important to recognize why we do this work. And people will ask me all the time, you're a dietitian, shouldn't you only be promoting the nutrient dense foods, or weight loss? And I think it's really important to recognize that dieting does not work. And we know this through the research. I have some of these studies quoted here. You're more than welcome to take a picture of this, or again, we're going to be sending this recording out. But 2/3 of dieters will actually gain back more weight than they originally lose. So when I'm working with clients, and when our team is working with clients, and we say, okay, why have you been dieting for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? A lot of them will say to us, to lose weight or to better my health, which we're going to talk all about the truth behind weight and health tomorrow. But when I look at from a weight standpoint, if we're going on diets to lose weight, we know that the majority of people greater than 2 years are going to gain back 95% of that weight and or more. So it's actually the opposite of what we're trying to achieve if weight loss is that goal. We look at from a health perspective that yo-yo dieters have an increased risk of heart disease. So yo-yo dieters in this study by the American Heart Association was defined as people that lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, lose weight, gain weight, will actually have a higher risk of cardiovascular disease than those who stayed a consistent weight over time, regardless of the size of their body. That is so profound when we're looking at that result. And then we look at knowing that dieting is one of the most important predictors of ED. In this case, we're talking about eating disorder in adolescence. So we know that those that engage in dieting are actually going to have a higher risk of eating disorder. And we know that 75% of women have either disordered eating behaviors and or eating disorder. So 65% of those have disordered eating behaviors, and an additional 10% have eating disorder behavior. Now, or excuse me, eating disorder. So when we look at what disordered eating behaviors are, they are literally behaviors that are glorified by diet culture: counting calories, weighing food, skipping meals, restricting timing of eating, restricting an entire food group. I've literally seen medical professionals on social media praising people for this, when in the literature, this is defined as a disordered eating behavior. So, and I apologize if there's anybody on here who identifies as transgender or non-binary as well. When we're looking at the research right now, a lot of the research is done on females only. They are working on research for males and for those who identify as transgender as well. But I think it's really important to just take note of 75% of women ages 20 to 45% are walking around with disordered eating or eating disorder. That is a large number. So we want to look at, okay, why is this, right? We look at the fad diet cycle. And I would love if you identify to this fad diet cycle here. I want you to put in the chat preach if you're like, yes, this I've done before. So what this is if we say, okay, I've restricted something, right? I'm going to use the keto diet, no more carbs, right? You restrict, you restrict, you restrict, you restrict as long as possible. Then you get to a point where you can't do this anymore, right? Because something stressful happens, or you don't have availability to the food, or you just simply can't do it anymore. And then we binge, and then we feel like a failure, and then we feel guilt or shame. And then we say, oh my God, how could I do this? I'm so unhealthy. I can't stick to my diet. I need to start another diet. And then we get stuck in this cycle. So I see so many people yelling, preach, 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 story of my life, right, in the chat right now. So this is something that it's really crucial that, I mean, it's amazing that all of you that are writing preach, like you identify with this and you're able to take note of it, right? We're creating curiosity. We're not creating guilt or shame. Nobody here needs to feel bad for doing this. As I shared with you earlier, I lived 8 years of my life in this cycle. So, but being able to identify it is that first step. Okay. So, why this typically gets broken, the restriction part of it, is because if we lived at home, right? If we didn't have to work, so this is kind of like a global pandemic, except global pandemic has way more stress involved. If we lived at home, right, and only like had a private chef who took care of us and shopped for us and cooked for us, and we didn't leave our home and we had no stress, then maybe we'd be able to follow a diet for the rest of our life. But if you have work, if you have a social life, if you travel, if you experience unexpected life events like losing a loved one, being stuck in traffic, a global pandemic, these are things that clearly are going to affect your food behaviors and your access to food. And we have to be realistic about that. Dieting is not sustainable. And so you have not failed. I want you to know that when you felt like a failure and then guilt and shame was a part of that cycle for you, you did not fail. Diet culture failed you. And the reason you're here today is to say, how do I get out of this terrible cycle and this horrible diet culture roller coaster? And how do I create sustainable behaviors that are going to honor my body? So, as we continue in this, I think when you're thinking of starting a diet, and it's okay if you have that question. If some of you are like, honestly, Sammy, I was thinking about starting the keto diet and then I saw your training. So I wanted to come on and see your training before I did something, totally fine. You have total right to body and diet autonomy. I am not here to try to, air quotes, convince you to do something. I'm here to provide you with the research tied with cognitive behavioral therapy, truly, that we do with clients, and see how that affects your health and how that affects your mental and physical and emotional health. And once you have all that information, then you have the right to say what you want to do. Only you get to decide that. And I think that's really, really important. So if you're thinking of starting a diet, is it sustainable for the rest of your life, right? Ask yourself that question. Am I going to intermittent fast for the rest of my life? Am I going to do the keto diet for the rest of my life? Does it compromise your mental sanity? So what I mean by that, if you and your girlfriends are going to go to brunch on Saturday and that brunch is not in your intermittent fasting window, is that going to drive you nuts? If you're at a family holiday party and it's not in your feeding window, are you going to be sitting there the whole time not present because you're too caught up that you're not allowed to eat grandma's, pumpkin pie that you look forward to every year? That's mental sanity right there. And is it going to improve your health in the long term? And this is something we're going to go over way more tomorrow. So definitely make sure you do not miss tomorrow. But we know that there are no randomized controlled trials that show sustained health outcomes greater than 2 years for any fad diet. Any fad diet that's keto, that's intermittent fasting. We actually just had new research come out on intermittent fasting a week ago. That was amazing. Pro intuitive eating of that intermittent fasting actually does not show sustained weight loss and or health outcomes. It was actually worse outcomes for people. So again, we have to ask ourselves these questions, because if we're able to say, no, it's not sustainable for the rest of my life. Yes, it compromises my mental sanity. And no, it doesn't improve my health. Why are we dieting? I invite you to journal that question after today. Why am I dieting? Is it a crutch? Is it a coping mechanism? Is it something that makes you feel safe or in control? It's important to know the why, right? Curiosity. That's the name of the game today, is curiosity. So let's continue on then with what we're going to get into today, is making peace with food, which is one of the 10 intuitive eating principles. But I think it's really important to touch on what is intuitive eating, right? So intuitive eating is an evidence-based self-care form of eating with 10 principles that helps you regain trust with your body. It is applicable for every body, shape, size, color, medical disease. It was founded by Evelyn and Elise, who is where we've gotten our certification from. And I think this is really important to take note of, because I think on social media, intuitive eating looks like I'm going to use air quotes, like, fuck it, I'm going to eat whatever I want and I don't give a shit about health. That's not intuitive eating. That might be what some people on Instagram make it look like, but it actually has 10 defined principles with over 120 studies that can help you not only make peace with food, but care for yourself in a way that honors your body. And so we're not going to go deep into the 10 intuitive eating principles today, but I think this is really important to take note of, that today's presentation, we are only going over one from here on out. So we're only going over make peace with food, which is the third principle listed on this page. But you'll see there's 9 other principles on this page that make up all things intuitive eating. Everything from movement and exercise and joyful movement to gentle nutrition and honoring your body with nutrient dense options, rejecting the diet mentality, hunger, fullness, satisfaction, emotional eating or coping with emotions. So intuitive eating is not just making peace with food, although I'd like to cover that one first, because I find that every single person that comes to intuitive eating really needs to make peace with food to be able to work on the other principles, and to be able to feel our hunger and fullness. We have to have peace with food, so we're not hyper obsessing about what we're eating, so we can actually listen to our body. And if we want to increase our nutrient density and include nutrient dense foods, we have to remove that guilt and that shame associated with food before we can do that, or else it's going to feel really icky and it's going to feel like another diet again. Okay, so let's jump into a few different questions here. So definitely going to use the chat for this one. If you guys can please tell me, again, no shame, no guilt, what foods do you feel out of control around? Or what foods, another way to ask this, what foods do you feel are air quotes bad, or that you try, like if you would have them in the house, you feel like you can't control yourself and that you're going to eat them to excess. So put this in the chat for me. Is it, I see potato chips in here. So cookies, sweets, bagels, brownies, peanut butter. Thank you so much for sharing, Susie. All the cheese, bread, and all carbs in general. So I'm seeing a lot of carbs on here: French fries, candy, sweets, banana bread, cookies, baked goods, pizza. Someone said all foods fit, which is great. So, okay, so I'm seeing a lot of similar ones. I'm seeing a lot of sweets. I'm seeing a lot of carbs, a little bit of cheese in here as well. Okay, so these are the foods that we're saying I feel out of control around these foods, right? Now, the next question for you: what foods do you restrict? What foods do you try to stay away from? If they are the same foods that you just put, I want you to put in the chat, I want you to say same with an exclamation point. Like same. It was the same for me. The foods that I feel out of control are the same foods that I restrict. I'm seeing same, 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 same. Wow. Wow. Okay. So, what we are finding here is, this is a really, really big point that I want everyone to take note of, is that the foods that you feel out of control around are the foods that you restrict. And I want you to know that that is not by chance. I am not a fortune teller. I did not know that. But we know through the research that restricting foods fuels binging. And so this is a beautiful little drawing that is done by a friend of mine, Taylor. Her account is Food and Fearless on Instagram. She is a non-diet dietitian and an artist, and she does some amazing drawings that you'll see in some of my future slides. But we know that restricting fuels binging. So if we look at this right here, if we see this pendulum swing, I'm going to use carbs as an example because I saw a lot of that in the chat, right? So if we restrict carbs, let's say we restrict, right? We get to a point where we feel like, I can't do this anymore. Something stressful happens, whatever it is, and we let go. And the pendulum swings way further in that opposite direction, and we start binging on the food. And why that happens, there's actually something going on in the brain where we, in layman's terms, are saying, okay, I'm allowing myself to eat this food. Technically, I'm not, air quotes, allowed to eat this. So I'm going to eat this, and I'm really going to eat a lot of it because come tomorrow or come Monday, I'm not allowed to eat this food again. Another way you might see this come is it might not even be a specific food group, but it could be portions of food. So often we'll see clients, they restrict portions. Another way to say this is they try to, air quotes, be good all day. So I'll see people, I'm going to use kind of that pendulum or that bow and arrow of be good, be good, be good, be good, which is actually restriction. And then at the end of the day, they're walking through the door and they feel out of control around food, and they're eating anything and everything they can get their hands on. Another way I see this come up with people is weekdays versus weekends. So if we think about, okay, I'm going to, air quotes, be good Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, maybe Friday. When the weekend comes, again, so be good, be good, be good, be good all week. When the weekend comes, screw it, I'm going to eat whatever and whenever I want because come Monday, I'm not allowed to eat these foods anymore. If you relate to this, put in the chat, I relate, or relate, right? Let me know if this is something that you're like, this is something that I definitely relate to. And awesome. So we're definitely in the right place, right? This is awesome that you guys are able to relate to this, because without this awareness around the behaviors, we can't make changes, right? And so the big thing is people will tell me, and I see Alexis, you wrote, and you feel like a failure. And yes, that's because diet culture tells you that you are a failure. But what I'm here to tell you is that every single one of you that are here that just wrote you relate, you are not a failure. And I know this might seem silly that I'm getting excited about this, but it means your body is working correctly. It means that if you were trying to restrict carbohydrates for however long, your body said, no, we ain't doing this anymore. I'm going to eat whatever the hell I want. And once we tie morality to food, which we're going to get into here in a sec, that actually fuels you to eat even more. Because once we have shame associated to food, it's now becoming more psychological as well. And there's a psychological connection. So you guys are not failures. And now what's hard though, right, is if you've lived in this behavior pattern for a really long time, what happens is that if you say, okay, Sammy, so you're telling me that I can eat whatever I want and I have unconditional permission to eat, then that natural fear that's going to rise up is, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to stop eating. I'm literally going to eat carbs or chips or ice cream or whatever it is for the rest of my life. And I'm literally never going to stop. And I'm going to gain all the weight in the world. We hear this over and over and over from our clients when they start with us. And it's important to note that the reason why your brain jumps right to that extreme is because that's all that your body knows right now, and your brain knows right now, that when you're not restricting, you're binging, right? So if the restriction isn't in place, you're, air quotes, out of control. But really it's not that. That's happening because of the restriction. So what happens when we start to say, okay, all foods fit, and I'm gonna work on making peace with food, is that in the beginning, there may be feelings of uncontrollable eating, or there may be, I call it celebratory binging, where my clients are like, yeah, like I have unconditional permission to eat. This is awesome. But then they start to notice, when I do this, I don't feel physically pleasant sometimes. So then as we continue to remove the guilt and shame, that next question is, well, what would make you feel physically pleasant? Right? And how do we start to incorporate all foods? And once your body and your brain begin to trust that you have unconditional permission to eat and that nothing is restricted, you will fall in that middle ground of that food peace, or making peace with food, or food freedom, as we like to call it here at Find Food Freedom, because you will have unconditional permission to eat, and you will trust that you're not going to be binging. And if you do, again, there's no guilt or shame to it, but we can recognize, why am I doing that? Right? That's what we're doing today, is we're creating curiosity. And everyone here today that said, oh my God, the foods I feel out of control around are the foods that I am also restricting, you now know the why. So now it's up to you. What do I do with that? Right? It can be a lot to take in. It can feel overwhelming. But if you know the why, now we can start to dig deeper into that. Okay. So here is another, I love a good nutrition pun or like drawing. So that next thing is, how do we remove morality with food, right? So that's the good and bad notion, because that actually fuels that restriction and binging as well. So another art drawing here from Taylor at Food and Fearless, but she deems that bad foods are foods that lie, foods that steal, foods that destroy life, and foods that cheat. And so there's no such thing as a bad food. So a big part of this is removing that verbiage that creates guilt and shame. Now, as you guys know, I'm a registered dietitian. So when I say there's no such thing as a bad food, I am not saying that a donut and a stalk of broccoli have the same nutritional value. Of course, they're different, but neither one of them holds moral value. And what I mean by that is, if let's pretend we're all having lunch together right now, if we were having a big old salad with grilled chicken and a lot of veggies, that does not make us a better person. Just like if I was sitting here eating lunch and I had 2 donuts, that does not make me a bad human being, right? That has nothing to do with morals. And so, how we can find if we have morality associated to food is, I would love for you guys to answer this question. If I say, are you a bad human being for eating blank? So I want you to think about your food, your fear food. So if it was ice cream, if it was potato chips, when I ask you that, meaning, does that change your character or the type of human that you are in this world? Are you a bad human for eating the potato chips or for eating the ice cream? Does that change your character or your worth on this earth? So go ahead and put that in the chat. Interesting. So Alexa said, not for other people, but for me, I feel like yes. Okay, so someone else in here said, I know it doesn't change my worth, but I feel bad about my choice. Okay. So we're seeing, no, it doesn't change my worth, but okay. So the rational answer, Megan saying, is no, but emotional is yes. Okay. So interesting how we're kind of seeing a twofold here. So this second question might help. So okay, so the first question was, do you feel like that changes your worth or your character? The next question is, do you feel guilt for eating X, right? So do you feel guilt or shame? So now I'm seeing yes, lots of guilt. Yes. Awesome. Seeing this coming through. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So what I want you guys to think about is that guilt is a moral emotion, right? So if I, let's say, was walking down the street and I steal an ice cream cone from a kid and run away, I should feel guilt, right? Or if I go into a gas station and I go in and I grab some nutrition bars and I steal them and I run out, I should feel guilt, right? But the actual act of eating food, if we have guilt associated to that, that tells us that that is a moral emotion. And so what was happening when some of you were like, no, it doesn't change my worth, but yes, I feel guilt. What that means, that is something that we call a cognitive dissonance. Okay. So for anybody on this call, again, so happy you are here. You are in the right place. If you're saying, no, it doesn't change my worth, yes, I feel guilt, that's a cognitive dissonance where your logic and your belief system does not match up. Okay. And so Again, just like earlier where I said, okay, we notice that feeling out of control around food and restricting foods, we found the connection, right? We get curious about it. I want to invite you to journal. Why is this happening? Where is this coming from? Okay, same thing here. If you say, no, I'm not a bad human being, but yes, I have guilt, that's a cognitive dissonance. That is something that we have to challenge. And until we start to challenge that, it is impossible to make peace with food because we have guilt and shame associated with the act of eating certain things, which actually fuels this process. Okay. So, this is something that, again, being here on this call today, I want you to know, if you recognize this, if you're like, yes, this is me, you are in the right place. I'm so happy you're here because recognizing this, once you recognize this, this is actually something we can challenge, and we can start to work through this. Okay. So a big part of this is normalizing hunger, right? So right here I have a cute little cartoon baby, and I think it's important to think about babies because babies are all born as intuitive eaters, and we were all babies before. So if you normalize your hunger, this is going to help you build evidence against that cognitive dissonance. So, babies, when they're hungry, they cry. And what do we do as the adult? We feed them right away, right? That's the first thing we go to. We're like, here's the bottle, here's the breast. Like, we try to feed them, right? When we feel hunger as adults, we question it. We're taught to question it. We're taught to fight through it or have willpower or have more discipline. I'm going to use air quotes the entire presentation if you haven't noticed. Um, we have to normalize hunger. We have to trust hunger. So this is starting to kind of couple making peace with food and honoring our hunger, which are two of the intuitive eating principles, as one. They kind of all blend together. So babies cry when they're hungry and we feed them. And what do babies do when they're not hungry anymore? They stop eating, right? They turn away from the breast, they turn away from the bottle. We don't question them. When they're done, they're done. And that's it. And it's truly, I wish I could say it's just as simple as that for adults, but we have all of these external influences that make us question our hunger, right? So what you can see here is, I love a good analogy, another drawing from Food and Fearless. So if you haven't already followed her, you definitely need to give her a follow. She's fabulous. But an analogy regarding your hunger, right? So let's pretend when we hopped on this call that one of you were like, hey, Sammy, can you hold on? I have to go pee. If I looked at you and said, are you sure that you have to pee? You'd be like, what the hell? Like, yeah, I literally just told you I have to pee. I would question you if you told me that you had to pee, because I trust that at this point in your life that you can listen to your body's signals of when you need to urinate, right? And if you try to push that off and say, oh, I'll pee later, I'll pee later, I'll pee later, eventually you're going to piss yourself, right? And it's not going to be so fun. So if we skip over to the green pathway, right? If you feel hunger and you tell yourself, you know what, I'm hungry, but I'm going to have more discipline. I'm going to have more willpower. I'll deal with it later. Push it, push it, push it. What happens? You will binge. Period. End of story. So we know that restriction causes binging, but we also know that pushing off hunger causes binging. And it's not a bad thing at all. Again, I want you to hear this so clearly. This means that your body is working properly. There is nothing wrong with you, I promise. And the reason why you've been told that you're a failure is because our 72 billion diet culture would crumble if everyone believed that there's nothing wrong with their body and they just have to listen to it. Our diet culture wouldn't survive. There is nothing wrong with your body. If you feel hunger and you've restricted yourself for hours and hours and hours and hours, you're going to binge. I want you to think about if you've ever, let's say, been busy one day doing errands and maybe you couldn't get to food for 5, 6, 7 hours for whatever reason. Maybe you didn't have availability, you couldn't get to it. And then you get home and what do? Right? We rip the cupboards open, we stuff anything into our mouths that we can find. Usually the carbohydrate foods are more desirable because those will get our blood sugars up quicker. that doesn't make you a bad human. That makes you hangry. And your body is actually wanting food. So if any of you are watching this and you're like, yes, I relate to this, put that in the chat. Say, I relate to this, or I relate. This is something that is now we are kind of dabbling with two of the intuitive eating principles now. We've talked about making peace with food, removing the morality with specific types of food, but also normalizing hunger, honoring hunger. We've been told and taught by diet culture to push through the hunger, have more discipline, have more willpower. For someone who in the chat, you just said, I relate, I used to starve myself all day, then raid the cabinets when I got home. There's nothing wrong with you. Your body was trying to save you. Hunger is a compensatory response that we are given as babies, and our body knows when it's hungry. And we've had so many external influences that try to teach us not to trust our body. But guess what? You can trust your body again. 100%. Now, I wish it were as easy as me just waving a wand and saying, you can do it. But if you've been in diet culture for 5, 10, 20 years and not trusting your body for a really long time, it just takes a little time to truly trust these signals again. I want you to think of it like a light switch, right? Think about the fancy light switches that have the little like dimming where you like slide it up and down. So your hunger signals to your trust factor with those, it's slid all the way down. So it's really dim right now. We can slowly turn that back up, and we can slowly begin to trust again. And instead of, it's not like your light switch has been pulled out of the wall and thrown away. You still have these. We just haven't had trust with them. And so this is something that I want you to know, that it's absolutely possible to normalize hunger. There is nothing wrong with binging. And the more that we normalize that and ask ourselves, why am I binging? Not rush to, I'm such a bad person. How could I do this? I have so much guilt around this. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Where is this coming from? Have compassion with yourself, just like you would that friend or family member or sister or partner. If you were to say to them, hey, it's okay, like, what's going on, right? Why can't we do that with us? And so normalizing hunger is a huge, huge, huge part of this. And so what you can see here, again, another image from Food and Fearless. I truly am like a huge fan of her art, and I think it just speaks to everything. So when you work with, let's say, our team, Find Food Freedom, who are registered dietitians and intuitive eating counselors, or it doesn't have to be our team, any intuitive eating counselor, we really teach curiosity with behaviors. So what I mean by that is removing the guilt and shame, leaving it at the door, like we said, and becoming curious of, why are we restricting and binging? Why are we feeling out of control around food? Diet culture, or people that are traditionally trained in diet culture, are taught to tell you, stop binge eating, right? Don't eat foods that are high in sugar. It's just like a rule, right? When really we know from a cognitive state that that's going to perpetuate and make those things worse. We in this space, in this paradigm, say, why do we do that? Tell me more. And the more that we can remove the guilt and the shame and the judgment, the more we can become curious about our behaviors, and then we can change them. And that is what this is all about. This is not about just eat donuts all day long. Do you have the permission to do that? Absolutely. You can do whatever you want. But once you remove the guilt and the shame, you can say, if I ate 27 donuts all day long, I probably wouldn't feel so good physically, or pleasant, right? And then we can say, how can I shift that? So the why behind what we eat is so much more important than what we eat. And when we work with clients, our goal is to really understand that once we dig deeper into the why behind we eat, then we can start to address the what we eat. Nutrient dense foods are amazing. So things like salad and veggies and apples and fruits and vegetables, I love those, but those should not be the only foods that you're eating. Those should be a part of it, but they shouldn't be the only thing. And so a great question you can ask yourself when you sit down for a meal or for a snack is, what is the intention behind my food choice, right? Is this going to fill me up? Is this what I'm craving? Does this sound like it would satisfy me right now? What is the intention behind your food choices? Is it simply because you want the lowest caloric value, because you're trying to get the least amount of grams of carbs in your diet, right? Go back to your intention. What is your intention behind your food choices? And the more we can remove the guilt, the shame, the judgment, and replace it with curiosity, the more we can make these changes. Okay. So, this is day one, right? Making peace with food with a little bit of honoring our hunger is something that we talked about today. And we've truly only covered the tip of the iceberg in today's training. And food freedom is really a journey. Before I get to the next slide, I do want to cover Brittany in the chat. I love that she wrote the idea that we can't keep certain foods in the house. There is something that I'm going to type into the chat. Habituation. I think I spelled it right. I'm terrible speller. Food habituation. That's something you should definitely take note of. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of research on food habituation. And this is really helpful for when we're trying to make peace with food. And what food habituation is it's the idea that when we have access and availability to food over and over and over again, it becomes kind of like to us. So I want you to think about foods that maybe you've allowed yourself on diets, like grilled chicken, brown rice, broccoli, maybe vegetables, whatever it is. If there's certain foods that you're like I'm kind of like over it because I've had so much of it, right? Or like I eat it all the time, so I'm like totally sick of it. So those would be things like maybe things we did in diet culture. Now, when we look at food habituation, one of my favorite studies was a study on college kids, and they were told that for 1 month they had to go to this educational seminar at night, and they were going to get free pizza, as much pizza as they wanted every single night. And at the beginning of the study, they were like, yes, like free pizza every night. This is amazing. By the second week, they couldn't even look at pizza again because they had had so much pizza that they were like, I can't even look at it anymore. Right. And so the idea behind food habituation, we of course don't want that to happen to your favorite foods, but the more that you have exposure to foods and believe that you have full availability to these foods, the more we can get into this space of, I can have it whenever I want it. And a lot of the times people find that that happens with the foods in diet culture, like the grilled chicken or the salad or whatever. They're like, well, yeah, I can have that whenever I want. So, like, whatever, right? So, why are these foods like donuts and pizza and chips, and why are they such this, this, dramatic, oh my God, I can't have them, I'm out of control around them? It's back to the restriction. And so food habituation is something that is highly studied, in that when we're working with someone to make peace with food, that's what we're keeping in mind is, how do we habituate certain foods? And it's not just pulling the rug out from under you and saying, okay, now you have permission to eat all foods. It's working one fear food at a time. And again, bringing back to, how do you feel physically, mentally, emotionally, and really bringing awareness to this. Okay. So as I said here, we have only covered the tip of the iceberg in the training. And we're going to continue to really dig deeper these next few days on the truth behind weight and health, as well as how to build a better body image, which that is one of my favorite topics as well. So what's important to take note of is today, like I said, we dabbled with how to make peace with food. And we also dabbled with a little bit of honoring your hunger, which are 2 of 10 intuitive eating principles. So if you are on this training, I think it's important to ask yourself, how long have you been dieting for? Or when is the first memory for you of a diet? Maybe it was a family member telling you to go on a diet, or restricting you of a food, or going to a Weight Watchers meeting with a mom or a parent. And feel free, if you feel safe and comfortable to share this, you can put this in the chat. How long have you been dieting for? How long has this been going on? Has this been, so we have someone that said 30 years, right? And so has this been 5, 10, 20, 30 years of our lives. And I think it's really, really important to have grace with yourself that this a lot of times when people's relationship with food is struggling, or they feel like they don't have peace with food, this is something that usually we can tie back to childhood, or we can tie back to comments that were said to us. And so I see a lot of people saying 12 years, 14 years old, 20 years I've been dieting, 30 years. And that's really common. And I think it's really important to note, like, thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing this. And look how many of you are in this chat and supporting each other to say, like, oh my gosh, like I've been here too. Like this has been a lifelong thing for me. And so what's really important to note is that when you're on these trainings with me, and I know some of you have already said this, of you're like, oh my God, like you're putting to words what I haven't been able to express, or you're putting to words what, diet culture would say, I'm not getting results, but it's not because of that. It's because of this. And it's important to note that if we've been living a certain way for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, a 3-day training series, I don't want you to set an expectation that this is going to magically fix everything. Is this going to help you identify your why? Absolutely. And that's what, when we started this training, leaving the guilt and shame at the door, having grace with ourselves, creating curiosity, this is really important. And I want you to know that if you've been in diet culture for a really long time, it is okay. Okay. There's no reason to have shame or guilt around that. But I want you to know that it is never too late to walk away from diet culture. My oldest client right now is a 78-year-old male, who is learning intuitive eating for the first time. And he loves it because he's like, I have been on Weight Watchers my entire life. He had an open heart surgery and has been told by doctors that he needs to starve himself to get his weight down. He has type 2 diabetes, and we've been working together, and he's gotten his A1C down to technically not even be flagged with diabetes anymore. And so this practice is for everyone. Now, a 78-year-old male isn't our normal client. We work with clients of all ages, but typically, I will say the majority of our clients are women who have been dieting for an extensive period of time. And I want you to know that if you've been in diet culture for a long time, it is not too late for you. And the fact that you showed up here today and had the courage to take time out of your day to learn about this, to remove the guilt and shame, even just for this hour, and to ask yourself why some of these things are like this in your life is a huge step. So I want everyone right now to type into the group and say, I am taking care of me. I want you to write in the group right now. If you are in this chat, if you were on this call, I want you to write, I am taking care of me. And you have the ability to do this. No matter how long you've been dieting for, no matter how many diets you've done, it is never too late to remove the guilt and shame and start taking care of you because you want to take care of you. And that's where I think there's a big misconception. And we're going to get into a lot of that tomorrow with the truth behind weight and health. There's a lot of misconception that intuitive eating isn't caring for yourself and that it's eating whatever the hell you want. It's the opposite. It's truly taking care of you and listening to what you need. So this is amazing seeing how many of you are saying, I'm taking care of me. I'm taking care of me. I'm taking care of me. Oh, it makes me so happy. So I do want to just, as we kind of end today and get into a quick Q&A, I want to let you know that if you're like, Sammy, I feel like you're weirdly have stalked me and have been speaking directly to me because you know everything about my life. I promise I haven't been stalking you, although I probably follow most of you on social media as well. We do have our mastermind program that we already have filled 6 spots of 6 ladies who are saying, I'm ready to go. Like, I'm ready to do this for good. So we do have 4 spots left. And of course, I wanted to come on specifically for people on this training and let you know, because I know that you're special because you took time out of your day to do this for you and to say, I'm ready to take care of me. We do have just a little bit of info on our mastermind is that it is a 6-month program. We have 6 6 group calls, just like today, except you would have your audio and your camera officially turned on, and we do counseling group sessions. You're going to have a monthly one-on-one coaching session with an intuitive eating counselor and dietitian. So you're working one-on-one to dig deep into where you're struggling. And you're also going to have 24/7 access, almost like a text message access to our team. So anytime you have questions, concerns, anything that you need, just know that that's something we offer as well. And we also have our Find Food Freedom course that you're going to have lifetime access to, that teaches those 10 intuitive eating principles, and really walks through, how do I apply these to me and my life? Okay. So the mastermind, if you're saying, I mean, yeah, I like today's training, I'm not sure if I need that much support. If you're saying, I want to make peace with food, I want to trust my body, I want to make peace with my body, I want to stop the obsession of food and calories and macros, I want permission to eat all foods, but know that I'm going to feel physically and emotionally pleasant after I have that permission. I want to start engaging in behaviors that support my body and take care of me. You want a community of like-minded humans working towards the same thing. And you genuinely want to improve your health. Again, more on that tomorrow. Then this is a good fit for you. And this is something that we absolutely would love to have you. So I do want to let you know that, of course, I'm going to be here with you guys for the next 2 days. So this is not goodbye whatsoever. But you will see here, and Anna's going to send this link through, that if you're like, you know what, yeah, I want to check it out, I want to see what this is all about. If you go to bit.ly/apply dash find food freedom, all undercase, no spaces between anything, that will take you to our application. It takes like maybe 5 minutes to fill out, and it's going to help you also assess where your current relationship with food and body is right now. Anybody that is on this training, and of course I have all of your emails, so I know who signed up, over the course of the next 3 days, if you enter into this mastermind, you're going to get a bonus one-on-one call with me. So as soon as we get you in, just like we're doing now, except not on a training, it's going to be you and me on Zoom, and we're going to get into it right away. I'm going to ask, how can I help you? What are you struggling with? And how can we get started right away? So I would love to invite you to apply. Even if you're like, I don't really know if it's for me, but I know I need some type of support. We have other support options as well that we'd be happy to go over with you. But I want you to know that if you feel like you were being spoken to today and that it was just me and you, chances are that it's an amazing fit for you. So, and Melissa asked, what's the cost of the mastermind? As you go through the application, you're going to actually see a question that goes through pricing on there as well. So everything is in there. And because you guys are on the training, you're also going to get an exclusive discount as well. So that link for you guys live right now. Please know that as we see your applications come through, we already know that you're on the training list as well, so we can reach out to you directly if you have any questions. I'm also going to book I can book a one-on-one call with you if you just have questions. So if you just want to go over it and be like, tell me more about it, like I want to learn, we can absolutely chat with you. So I had to go because the laptop went fuzzy. No worries, Tanya, we see it in here now, so I think we should be good. So I just wanna leave, we have a few minutes left for live Q&A. So again, we're gonna keep that link up here for anybody that wants to apply, that is there for you. And if you have questions, like what are some questions that came up for you guys today? Awesome question, Megan. So Megan said, if you apply, is it not a guarantee for the mastermind program? That's a great question. Technically, no. We do screen all of our participants, and the reason why is to make sure that it's a good fit for you and that you're ready for it. Everybody in the group has been pre-screened. And so if for any reason, let's say we're chatting with you and we're like, maybe we're not ready for this, we do have some other options that are group only, so doesn't have the one-on-one, a little less intensive. So we can also talk about those as well. But it is not a guarantee. But as soon as we get your application, if it's approved, you're going to get an email from Anna today, as soon as it would be approved, to book a call with myself. And if it's approved, I'm going to try to get you on the phone as soon as possible, because those 4 spots will most likely fill up by Friday. So, and because you guys are on this training, we want to give you first priority, because you've shown like, I'm here, I want to learn, I want to do this. So absolutely, Megan, as soon as your application will be approved, we will email you right away and let you know, and get you on the phone so you can ask any questions you want. Perfect. Okay. So someone said, I've been eating intuitively for 7 months, and gained some weight, and I'm struggling with this. So thank you so much for this question. And this is absolutely a very common question. Anna, if you could please pull the link for the podcast we just did with Evelyn Tribole on the truth behind weight loss and intuitive eating, that would be a great resource. So when we look at, I think that's the number one question we get all the time is, can I lose weight and intuitively eat? Or if I start intuitive eating, am I just going to gain weight for the rest of my life and never stop gaining weight? Thank you so much, Anna, for sending that through. This is a podcast we just released last week with the author of Intuitive Eating, and we dive deep into weight loss and intuitive eating, and the myth behind that. So if we are gaining weight through intuitive eating, it's important to note that weight gain is not bad. Weight gain does not mean, again, no moral value tied to that. So we would want to look at, okay, what's going on? Were we heavily restricting and dieting before we started intuitive eating? Because we're naturally going to gain weight through incorporating more carbohydrates, hydrating our body. Weight is not always just fat mass. So we would really, really want to look into this. But like I said, that podcast is going to go deep, deep into a better explanation than I could do right now. And tomorrow's training is all about the truth behind weight and health. So I promise tomorrow that entire presentation is going to dig deep into that question. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for each and every single one of you being on this call today. It is 1 p.m. and I actually have a Drunk Dietitians episode right now that I have to film with the Good Morning America dietitian, Maya Feller, who is an amazing dietitian. So I'm going to hop off because I have to get on that recording right now, but I'm going to see each and every single one of you tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to get this recording out as soon as it downloads. So check your inboxes if you want to re-listen or go back to any parts. I love each and every single one of you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for spending your hour with me, and I will see you tomorrow. And we're super excited for your applications to come through as well. Anna's going to be looking at those right away. As soon as we see if they're approved or not, you'll be hearing from us. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.